So we're going to start chapter 9, which is the beginning of something so valuable in statistics. So we kind of started off like with just talking about sampling, and then we talked about um, samples, descriptive statistics. Then we moved into probability, which seems so disconnected at the time. And then we got to talk about sampling distributions, uniform, binomial. We kind of talked about different distributions. And then now we get to put this all together and create something what we call a hypothesis test about a population parameter. And this is so valuable, especially in statistics. Your research methods class will be full of doing hypothesis testing. And what this is we take exactly what you think a hypothesis and we test it. There are so many claims, and you know how I feel about it. The white blow dryer at Costco. So many claims that so many people, the whole entire America recommends a white blow dryer from Costco when they only surveyed 40 to 50 people that use the blow dryer, which is nowhere a good representation of the American population, right? But I make that claim, and I'm sure I'd be able to prove that claim. So let's talk about this. So, what is a hypothesis, right? A hypothesis is a statement regarding a characteristic of one or more populations. So, here are some examples. So, notice we have a population statistic, right? In 2008, 62% of Americans adults regularly volunteer their time for charity work. You hear stuff like this all the time. It's in pamphlets, whatever, right? But then a researcher claims, right? A researcher believes this percentage is different today, and that's the claim, right? Okay, let's look at the other one. The next one. According to a study published in March 2006, the mean length of a phone call on a cell phone was 3.25 minutes. So there's the population, right? It's saying, according to a study, everybody's on a phone call spends about 3.25 minutes. Now, a researcher believes that mean length has increased since then. There's your claim. Okay, let's look at the third one. Using an old manufacturing process, the standard deviation of the amount of wine put in a bottle was 0.23 ounces. So now they're talking about all wines. All wines manufactured had a standard deviation of 0.23 ounces. So now they have a population parameter. And now, with new equipment, the quality control manager believes the standard deviation has decreased. And there's your claim. So you can see you're always given some sort of population like data, some sort of previous research data, and then the researchers say, well, this has changed, right? Just like how much we spend on the internet. When the internet first came out, those minutes weren't that large, right? But now if we did it, right, that data changes. We're on the internet all the time now. Okay, so a warning. We test these types of statements using a sample data because it is usually impossible or impractical to gain access to the entire population. If population data are available, there is no need for inferential statistics. So if we're able to get a population data and evaluate the entire population, then we don't need hypothesis testing because we don't need to estimate a population because we can find the population data. So we have to use sample data. And one of the examples I always use is the AT&T, right? They always had this thing with lowest drop calls. And I think I discussed this earlier in chapter 2 where that was actually an incorrect statement, right? Because their sample data, if I really wanted to see if AT&T had lowest drop calls and got the population data, that's almost impossible, right? And impractical. Is AT&T going to pay me to go to every single country and every single village and ask every single person in AT&T how many drop calls they've had? No, right? Because it's expensive, right? I mean, this is realistic math. So like the cost is too high for something like that. So they have to use sample data. And so because AT&T didn't have good enough sample data, they ended up having to retract this information that their campaign for this. So just always keep this in mind, you know, and as in the back of your head, because you know, sometimes we ask ourselves, why are we even doing this? Well, because we're never going to get the population, and this data is so valuable in so many different ways. Okay, so the hypothesis testing is a procedure based on sample evidence, right? Sample and probability using to test statements regarding a characteristic of one or more populations. And there's 3 steps. We're going to make a statement, just like we saw in the previous example. This is the work, right? Collecting the evidence, and then we analyze. So this is in the problem, right? Collecting the evidence that should be given as raw data or descriptive. And then the analyze the data, that's going to be our work here. That is the hypothesis testing. That's us. This is the new part. These first 2 we can see, like, okay, we see the claim, we see the raw data they give us, and now this is the work, step 3.